At the time, I was 16 years old. My father had just been transferred to a new city, and everything still felt a bit blurry for us. My new high school was about 10 kilometers from home, almost on the edge of the city. Since it was too far to go back and forth every day, the school offered a boarding option, mostly for kids whose parents worked far away or traveled often. So my parents decided to enroll me there so I could be closer to school and focus better on my studies. Honestly, I wasn't excited at all. It was the first time in my life I was going to live far from them, in a place I didn't know, surrounded by strangers. But, well, as we say where I'm from, when parents decide, the child obeys. When I arrived at the boarding school, they assigned me to dormitory number 5 with 3 other students. The oldest building, built back when the school still served as a military training camp. The supervisors said it was temporary, just until the other buildings were renovated. The ceiling was low, the walls dirty, and at night you could hear everything. The wind rustling through the metal sheets, rats crawling in the false ceilings, and sometimes something else. The first night went fine, but starting from the second night, around 3 in the morning, someone began knocking gently on the dormitory door. 3 soft knocks, spaced apart. Not aggressive, not rushed, just steady. When the supervisor came to check, he found no one. The next day he shrugged. It's the wind. The doors swell with the humidity. Serious shift. Except it kept happening. Almost every night. Always between 2 and 3 a.m. Lightly amused, skeptical, we started betting among ourselves who would dare open the door. No one. Not even me. But one night, I couldn't take it anymore. Not the fear, not the constant teasing from the others. So I got up and opened the door. There was nothing. Just the empty hallway, lit by a flickering bulb. But at that moment, I noticed something. The maintenance room door at the end of the hall was slightly open. I walked a few steps barefoot, heart pounding. I heard a sound, like a chair being moved. I wanted to speak, but my throat was dry. When I pulled the door open, the room was empty. Just a table, a few tools, and a small notebook lying there. Inside, pages filled with dates and initials, some very old. The last line was barely 2 days old. Time 0247, dormitory 5. Check, done. The next morning I tried to talk about it. The supervisor suddenly went pale. He scolded me and ordered me to forget what I had seen. 3 weeks later, we were all moved to a different building for urgent renovation. Dormitory 5 has been closed ever since. 2 years later, I passed by out of curiosity during a visit. The rusty gate hung sideways. The windows were broken. But on the wall, written in chalk, someone had written, Time 0247, dormitory 5. Check, done. I froze. I took a photo with my phone, but when I looked at it later, there was nothing on the wall. Just a gray patch of plaster. I never found out if someone was still doing the rounds, or if it was just an old habit turned into legend.
I was in my junior year of high school, living in a boarding school. It was already my 3rd year there, and you could say I had become an old student of the place. Over time, I had built myself a little family, a group of friends I could truly count on. Being an orphan, their presence had helped me a lot to overcome the loss of my father, who had passed away 2 years earlier. By then, I knew Every corner of the boarding school, every unspoken rule, the tricks to avoid trouble, and even which supervisors were best to stay away from. In short, I was comfortable. I had adapted to that life, a routine that was sometimes hard but familiar. The boarding school was an old building with strict rules. No going out, no phones, no noise after 9 p.m. But like all the students, I had a little phone hidden inside the lining of my bag. It was our only connection to the outside world. Our main supervisor, Mr. Kwame, was a strict man, but respected. He knew all the tricks. One evening during study hours, he caught one of my friends, Kareem, sending a text under the table. He confiscated his phone in front of everyone without saying a word. Kareem was furious. He said it was his only way to talk to his mother, who was sick. But the rule was the rule. The next morning, we learned that Mr. Kwame had collapsed on the road while going home. He had passed away before reaching the hospital. The whole school was in shock. Even the most unruly students were silent that day. 3 days later, an assistant supervisor emptied Mr. Kwame's locker to return his belongings to the family. Among the papers were several confiscated phones, including Kareem's. The assistant supervisor gave it back to him since he knew about his family's situation at the time. Kareem turned it on just to see if it still worked. In the call history, there was something strange. An outgoing call at 10:13 p.m., the same night Mr. Kwame died.
The number matched the supervisor's office phone inside the boarding school. No one was supposed to be there that night, and yet the call lasted 43 seconds. Kareem asked if there was a voicemail. Nothing. But in the phone's memory, there was an automatic recording, a feature few people even knew about. The audio was less than a minute long. We listened to it secretly in the dorm. At first, there were just footsteps, the sound of a chair creaking. Then Mr. Kwame's voice, breathing heavily. "Hello? Is that you? Why are you still here? No, go home, I said. Go home." Then a dull sound and silence. The next day, Kareem went to show the recording to the principal. They stayed locked in his office for nearly an hour. No one ever knew what they talked about. 2 days later, all the confiscated phones were handed over to the administration, officially for verification. And conveniently, the story of the call disappeared with them. No one mentioned it again. At the end of the term, Kareem left the boarding school without warning. He didn't even ask for his file. He stopped greeting anyone, stopped participating in anything. It was as if something inside him had gone out. I stayed, but since that day, I rarely sleep peacefully. When I was in 10th grade, my parents ended up enrolling me in a boarding school known for its strict discipline. At that time, I have to admit, I was a pretty difficult teenager. Since middle school, it was already the 3rd time I had been expelled from a school. My parents were at their limit. So for them, the boarding school was the last option, the one that could finally set me straight. I didn't blame them. Deep down, I knew they were doing what they thought was best for me. And to my surprise, my first weeks at the boarding school weren't as difficult as I had imagined. I've always been a social person, and pretty quickly I felt at home, like I belonged. We lived 6 per dormitory in old buildings built during the 1970s. The beds were made of metal, the paint was peeling, and the ceiling fans turned slowly, squeaking with every rotation.
At the entrance, there was a long row of rusty lockers numbered 1 to 40. Mine was locker number 26. The one right next to it, number 27, belonged to a student everyone called Gene. Gene wasn't a bad guy, but he wasn't really like us. Always quiet, his eyes often avoiding contact, and he wrote a lot in a small black notebook he always kept in his locker. He never joined our conversations, never played cards, not even the friendly dorm fights. Some said he had family problems. Others claimed he was on medication. No one really knew. At the start of the semester, strange things began to happen. Small items started disappearing. Toothbrushes, notebooks, USB keys, sometimes even underwear. Nothing serious, but enough to create tension and suspicion. Every night, supervisors searched our bags, found nothing. Then, one morning, a missing wallet was found inside Gene's bag. Everyone pointed fingers. The supervisor humiliated him in front of the entire dorm. Should we call the police for a wallet thief? Gene didn't answer. He just stared at the ground, lips pressed tight. For days after, he barely spoke. One night, I woke up because of a metallic sound. The fan had stopped, but the noise was coming from the lockers. When I looked up, I saw a pale white glow through the ventilation holes of locker 27. At first, I thought Gene was using a flashlight, but the light seemed to come from inside, shining on something. The next day during break, curiosity got the better of me. While Gene was in class, I discreetly opened his locker. Inside, there were neatly folded clothes, stacked with strange precision, and an old basic phone with no SIM card, but still turned on. The screen showed a WhatsApp chat. The messages were from a contact saved as Gene2. The chat looked like an argument. "You shouldn't have spoken. I don't want to do this anymore. You know it's for your own good." A chill ran down my spine. I stepped back quickly and closed the locker. A few minutes later, Gene returned. He looked me right in the eye. He didn't say a word, but he knew I had opened it. That night, he wasn't in his bed. His mattress was empty. The next day, the school said he had left the boarding school at his parents' request. But no one saw his parents, and when we checked, his locker was empty. Completely empty. A month later, a new student was assigned to Gene's old spot. While organizing his stuff, he found, stuck in the back of locker 27, a small black notebook. The first page simply said, "If you're reading this, it means he found me." Since that story, no one wants locker 27.